What the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. But what if that's truly the case? What if everything separating you from the life you've always wanted is just a single decision? What if I told you that you are merely 24 hours away from completely altering the course of your story, but you haven't realized it yet? How many times have you told yourself, one day I'll start, one day I'll begin taking care of my health, one day I'll kick off that project, one day I'll change my life? But that one day is the biggest dream thief there is. It sounds harmless, even prudent, but it's fear's perfect disguise. And fear wears many masks. It disguises itself as caution, as perfectionism, as waiting for the right moment. The truth is that right moment never arrives. Waiting for the perfect moment is like waiting for a train that will never appear at the station. Napoleon Hill often said, "It isn't a lack of talent that prevents people from growing, but a lack of decision." Because deciding is the turning point between who you are and who you can become. And he discovered this not by reading books but by living through it firsthand. Hill was born in a one-room cabin in the Virginia mountains, grew up surrounded by poverty, and lost his mother when he was 9 years old. He had no privileges, no connections, and no formal education that would open doors. But he possessed something almost no one else does: the willingness to take the first step, even without a guarantee of success. Still young, he worked writing short articles for a few cents. When he decided to do something unthinkable, he requested an interview with the wealthiest man in the United States, Andrew Carnegie. Think about it, a poor boy without credentials, knocking on the door of the most powerful man of that era. His chances of being received were minimal, but Hill didn't wait to be ready. He simply decided. And it was that decision that changed the course of his life and millions of others. Carnegie was impressed by the young man's audacity and challenged him to spend 20 years interviewing the world's most successful people to uncover the secret behind their achievements, without a salary, without promises, without any security. Just faith, purpose, and a decision. Hill accepted, and from that choice was born the philosophy that would make him the father of personal development. Had he waited for the right moment, perhaps the world would never have heard of Think and Grow Rich. Now look at your own life. How many times have you convinced yourself that you're not ready yet? How many times has fear, disguised as logic, prevented you from trying? Have you ever stopped to consider that perhaps the difference between what you live today and the life you desire to live is merely a moment of courage? One step. Just one step. Studies from the University of Scranton show that 92% of people fail to keep their New Year's resolutions, and the reason is simple: they wait to feel ready. But action precedes motivation. When you act, even with fear, your brain begins to release dopamine, the neurotransmitter of progress. Movement creates energy, and energy creates clarity. That's why so many people spend their lives waiting for a sign, when the true sign is discomfort. Discomfort is the call to growth, and paralysis is the symptom of those who ignore that call. Have you ever noticed how deep down, fear isn't of failure, but of judgment, of what others will think if you try and it doesn't work out? Hill used to say that most people prefer the security of known failure to the uncertainty of possible success. And that's exactly where you need to break the pattern. The decision to act will never be comfortable, but it is precisely discomfort that makes space for change. Staying still seems safe, but it's what keeps you stuck in the same place. Action seems risky, but it's what sets you in motion. You don't need to see the entire path, you just need to see the next step. Think of Hill himself facing Carnegie. He didn't know where that conversation would lead him, but he knew he couldn't let fear decide for him. The same applies to you. Fear will be there, doubt will be too, but you can choose who takes the wheel, courage or hesitation. Newspapers, statistics, and life stories show that people who achieve the extraordinary have something in common. They decided to start even when no one believed in them. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company before he revolutionized the world with the iPhone. Oprah Winfrey was rejected as a presenter before becoming one of the most influential women on the planet. None of them waited to be ready. They just started. And this is what Hill called the power of decision. He said that the universe conspires in favor of those who decide with clarity and act with faith. But this faith isn't mystical. It's self-confidence, the certainty that every step, however small it may seem, has value. So here's a challenge. Choose one thing you've been putting off for weeks, months, or even years. Just one. And within the next 24 hours, take a real step towards it. Write a message, schedule a meeting, start the first draft, or simply make the first move. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to exist. Because the world doesn't transform when you think. It transforms when you act. Have you ever woken up feeling alive but not truly living? That quiet restlessness that emerges when everything seems to be in place, yet inside you there's an emptiness, as if something you can't explain is missing. This isn't a lack of energy, it's not laziness, and certainly not a lack of luck. It's a lack of direction. When you don't know where you're going, any path feels heavy. And that's precisely what Napoleon Hill realized over more than 20 years interviewing the world's most successful people. He discovered an invisible line separating those who build the lives they desire from those who merely react to the lives they have. That line is called purpose. Hill observed something striking. All the great leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries he studied had a clear, defined, and written purpose. They didn't wake up to see what the day would bring. They woke up to fulfill a mission. The clarity of their objectives was so intense that it transformed ordinary days into fuel for something greater. Hill stated that what the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve, but he added that the mind requires clear direction to conceive anything meaningful. Without purpose, thought is scattered, and what is scattered is lost. That's why so many people feel tired even without doing much. Mental exhaustion stems from a lack of meaning, and meaning comes from clarity. A study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology revealed that people who live with a defined purpose have higher levels of psychological well-being, live longer, and possess greater emotional stability. They do experience frustration, but they transform that frustration into energy to start anew. It's as if they have an internal compass always pointing north, even when everything around them is in a storm. Hill experienced this profoundly. After Andrew Carnegie gave him the challenge to create a philosophy of success, he spent years without resources, without a salary, facing doubts, rejections, and criticism. Any ordinary person would have given up. But Hill wasn't driven by money, fame, or recognition. He had a greater purpose, to decipher the principles that would free people from a scarcity mindset. This was what kept him going, even on days when there was nothing but uncertainty and solitude. Hill taught a simple yet transformative exercise. Write down, specifically, what you want, the deadline you set for achieving it, the resources you'll use, and what you're willing to give in return. Because purpose without sacrifice is merely a wish. True purpose demands commitment. It compels you to choose what's worth keeping and what needs to be left behind. And perhaps that's why so many people shy away from clarity, because clarity comes at a price. When you define what you want, you automatically discover what you need to let go of, but the cost of confusion is far greater. People without purpose live reactively, dependent on the day's mood, on what others think, on what circumstances offer. They live like leaves in the wind, going wherever the strongest gust blows and rarely arriving where they intend. Hill said that indecision is the silent assassin of ambition, and he was right. Clarity doesn't mean having all the answers, but having a firm starting point. It doesn't eliminate obstacles, but it gives you the strength to face them. It transforms each day into a step and each step into progress, and you don't need a grand purpose in the eyes of the world. It just needs to be profoundly true for you. It could be building a better family, creating something that transforms your community, or simply proving to yourself that you are capable of more. Hill recounted that once, during the years he was writing his works, he went through a period of absolute emotional darkness. He saw no results, had no support, and began to doubt his own purpose. But something within him compelled him to keep writing, even when no one was reading. And it was precisely this silent persistence, guided by purpose, that led him to complete Think and Grow Rich, a book that would later become one of the most influential in history. When you know the why, the how always appears. This is one of the unwritten laws of human progress. Purpose creates direction, direction creates focus, and focus creates results. And the clearer the purpose, the quieter fear becomes. Because fear only thrives in doubt. Having purpose isn't about having an infallible plan. It's about having a reason that makes you get up, even when everything seems to go wrong. That's what differentiates those who merely survive from those who evolve. And when you discover your why, everything around you begins to align. Your decisions, your relationships, how you spend your time and energy. Suddenly, chaos transforms into coherence. Don't waste another day trying to make things work. Decide what you want to build, why you want to build it, and what you are willing to do for it. Because when the direction is clear, even headwinds help you navigate. And that is when life stops being a sequence of days and transforms into a purposeful journey. How many times have you wondered why it seems life tests you precisely when you decide to change? It's as if, the moment you gather the courage to move forward, the world decides to put everything to the test. Things fall apart, fear escalates, doors close, and that is when most people stop. They confuse difficulty with a sign they're on the wrong path, when in fact it's the opposite. Trials appear not to push you away from your destiny, but to prepare you for it. Napoleon Hill discovered this after decades studying the lives of history's greatest leaders and achievers. He realized that all of them, without exception, went through periods of setbacks, failure, and pain before achieving success. And what truly set them apart wasn't intelligence, money, or luck, but how they interpreted adversity. Failure for them wasn't the end. It was the process. Hill experienced this firsthand. After years of dedication writing The Law of Success, he expected recognition. But what came were critiques, rejections, and silence. The book was virtually ignored. He isolated himself, became discouraged, and started to doubt his own purpose. Those were dark days. He described this period as a mental desert, an emptiness where everything seemed meaningless. But it was in that valley that he discovered something that would change his life forever. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's its teacher. During those weeks of introspection and anguish, Hill understood that each setback was merely an invitation to reinvention. He rewrote his ideas, matured his principles, and returned stronger than ever. From that pain, his masterpiece, Think and Grow Rich, was born, a book that would transform millions of lives around the world. Temporary defeat forced him to look inward, to hone his faith and to strengthen his conviction. Without that moment of darkness, he might never have created the work that would make him immortal. This happens to all of us. Perhaps you are going through one of these periods now when everything seems to go wrong, when effort yields no results, when the world seems not to hear you. It is at this point that most people give up. But what if this moment is precisely the training you need? What if every frustration, every loss, every obstacle is the refinement process that is making you more prepared, more mature, stronger? Abraham Lincoln lived a similar story. Before becoming President of the United States, he lost repeated elections, failed in businesses, and suffered profound personal tragedies. With each defeat, he could have given up, but he didn't. He saw each failure as a stepping stone. And when he finally reached the top, his leadership capacity was unshakable. He wasn't the same man who started. He was someone molded by pain. But there is something important here. Resilience isn't pretending everything is fine. It isn't suppressing pain or denying difficulty. It is feeling everything that needs to be felt and even so, continuing. It is understanding that falling is not a sign of weakness, but rather of movement. Only those who are in motion can fall. Those who stand still don't fall, but they don't grow either. How many times have you tried something, failed, and decided that this isn't for me? How many times has a rejection made you believe you had no value? What if all these experiences were just preparing you for something greater? Hill learned that in life, nothing is wasted, not even failure. Everything is raw material for building your character. He also used to say that, with every temporary defeat, an opportunity of equivalent strength is born. But to see this, it takes courage to persevere, even when everything screams at you to give up. It is the moment you think you have reached your limit that transformation happens. The fall is the rehearsal for flight. It is in it that you learn to balance, to adjust, to trust. Each time you get up, your mind expands, your heart strengthens, and your faith deepens. There is no growth without loss, no evolution without discomfort. And the more you try to avoid pain, the more it pursues you. But when you face it head-on, it loses its power to paralyze you. History is full of examples of people who fell so many times they lost count, but used each fall as leverage. Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. When a reporter asked how he felt failing so much, he replied, "I have not failed 1,000 times. I have successfully discovered 1,000 ways that will not work." This is the mindset of someone who understands that failure is part of the process. The pain you feel now may be the price of the stronger version that is being born within you. It is at rock bottom that you learn to climb. It is in the darkness that you recognize the value of light. And when you refuse to give up, the universe responds. Life does not protect those who avoid falling. It rewards those who choose to rise. Every scar you carry is proof that you survived what many gave up facing. Every wound that has hurt is a living reminder that you are not fragile. You are forged. Hill said that adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit, and perhaps your benefit is still germinating. You may not see it now, but every tear, every frustration, every no is shaping you, and one day when you look back, you will realize that the moments that seemed to destroy you were, in fact, the ones that rebuilt you. Because pain is the school of the strong, and you, even without realizing it, are already learning to fly. Nothing truly changes until you believe you are capable of changing. The human mind has such great power that when it is not used in your favor, it turns against you. Napoleon Hill said that faith is the starting point of all achievement. But he wasn't talking about religious faith, but rather a silent force that is born when you believe deeply in yourself, even if the whole world doubts you. Belief is the invisible foundation of everything you build. If it is weak, any wind will knock you down. But when it is solid, nothing moves you. The problem is that from an early age we are conditioned to doubt. School teaches us not to make mistakes. Society teaches us not to dream too big. And life, with its setbacks, reinforces the idea that perhaps we are not good enough. Gradually, this voice of doubt disguises itself as your own voice. And the worst part is that you believe it. You start to think that you are not talented enough, intelligent enough, or that you missed the right time. Hill warned that the greatest enemy of success lives within your own mind. It is fear disguised as reason. And it is this fear that silently kills more dreams than failure ever could. But Hill also discovered something powerful. You can reprogram that voice. The mind is like a garden. What you plant grows. If you feed thoughts of fear, doubt, and limitation, that is what flourishes. But if every day you nourish your mind with courage, conviction, and faith, sooner or later the result appears. And this is not theory. Science confirms it. Research from the University of Oxford shows that people with high self-confidence have 33% more chances of making assertive decisions and persisting in their goals. They are not more capable than others. They simply believe they will find a way. This is the secret that few people understand. You don't need to see to believe. You need to believe to see. Belief precedes evidence. Everything that exists today, every invention, every achievement, every change, started as an idea that seemed absurd. When Thomas Edison said he would make light shine within a bulb, they laughed at him. When Walt Disney spoke of a park where dreams would come alive, they mocked him. When Hill said that thought is the seed of wealth, they called it madness. But each of them believed before it was real. And if you look around, you will see the same pattern repeating itself. People who believe in themselves create opportunities where others see obstacles. They don't wait for the perfect scenario. They create the scenario through action. True belief is not a fleeting emotion. It's a state of consciousness. It's acting as if it were possible even without guarantees. It's making the move before the ground appears, trusting that it will form beneath your feet. Many wonder, but how can I believe if everything seems to go wrong? Hill would respond that faith is built on difficult days, not easy ones. It is easy to believe when everything works. But it is in setbacks that belief is tested and strengthened. Each time you choose to continue, even without seeing immediate results, you are expanding your capacity to believe, and that expansion changes everything. One experiment conducted by researchers at Stanford University showed that people who cultivate positive thoughts about themselves develop significantly greater emotional resilience. They face challenges not as threats, but as opportunities for growth. This is exactly what Hill called the power of a directed mind. The mind believes what you feed it most often. Therefore, he taught the practice of daily self-affirmation, repeating to yourself with conviction what you wish to become. It's not magic, it's neuroscience. The brain learns through repetition. What you tell yourself frequently transforms into internal truth. But this belief needs to be accompanied by action. Hill affirmed that faith without action is merely hope. The difference between dreamers and doers is that doers act as if they are already capable. They do so even without guarantees, without applause, and without immediate results. This is what changes the course of your life. When you act as if you believe, the world begins to take you seriously. Opportunities that once seemed invisible start to emerge. The right people show up. Situations fall into place. Not because the universe magically conspires, but because your mind begins to perceive paths that were previously obscured by doubt. As Hill famously said, faith is the antidote to fear. As faith grows, fear loses its grip, and that's precisely when change happens. You don't need to eliminate all doubt. You just need to believe slightly more than you doubt. This subtle shift is the turning point. It's what separates the possible from the impossible. So, look within yourself. Perhaps what's missing isn't more knowledge, more time, or more opportunities. Perhaps what's truly lacking is the courage to stop negotiating with your own beliefs. Start speaking to yourself differently. Replace "I can't" with "I'm learning how to achieve this." Swap "this is too difficult" for "this is a challenge that will make me stronger." Words mold thought, and thought molds reality. Believe before you see. Act as if you already possess what you desire. And when fear whispers that you can't, remember Hill's timeless words: "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve." This is life's most powerful law. Believe in it with every fiber of your being, and the world will inevitably believe in you too. Nothing changes until you decide to believe in yourself and take action, even without guarantees. Faith in your own potential is the foundational step of all transformation. Doubt paralyzes, but action fueled by belief sets you free. This is what distinguishes those who merely dream from those who truly achieve. So, take this with you. The future isn't built on intentions, but on decisions. Now, if you're ready to continue this journey and climb another step in your wisdom's evolution, the next video is waiting for you on screen. In it, you'll discover how to become 1% better than you are now, a small advancement that can change everything. Thank you for being with me here today. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.